welcome to the Circle of Love group. Here we will discuss different topics that are in interest for the time being, things that are going on around the world, or topics that people are interested in the moment. So today we are here, Stephanie, Vic, and myself, Sissel. And Stephanie, what will we talk about today?
I don't know. We're going to have to talk to the circle because, of course, in this group, we work with those heaven side who have a higher point of view and have lived many, many lifetimes on earth. And so that's where they're coming from. But I do have to say that right now, what's really, really critical about this connection and why this is happening now and why, I'm out here putting myself out here and we all are putting ourselves out here is because the earth is in trouble. And understanding the history of how civilizations have risen and fallen. We just talked about Easter Island, how it could no longer sustain life. Although if they had managed it properly, they'd probably still have a thriving population there. The same with Atlantis. How societies and cultures and civilizations destroy themselves. And you can see evidence of it all over the world, in South America, in Egypt, wherever, of societies that are self-destructing. And some of it is because of climate change. Some of it is because of arrogance in their thinking, that they think their scientific knowledge can save them when in fact it destroys them, such as with Atlantis, because there is a tendency of people to become lackadaisical. Once they think they've got all their problems solved, they just sit back and say, well, nothing more to worry about. And in the meantime, the earth is burning up and, the Antarctic ice is not staying the same. There's questions about whether the ocean currents, and maybe it won't happen for a couple hundred years and you think you'll be dead. And you don't have to worry about it anymore. Well, I got news for you. You're going to get there, and God's going to say to you, have a nice rest before I send you back. And you may end up in one of those places that is burning up. You may end in one of those places on the side of a volcano because you did not pay attention to your world and to your obligation to keep your energy balanced and if everybody balanced their energy in a way and realized we're responsible for our world. And there's only a few people today that are really getting this, that they are responsible for their world. And we have to change it. We have to change it. And that's why we're telling the story of what happened, how humanity originated. That's why those in heaven side have come together and are pushing this, because they want to come back to a world that's intact, just like you will when you're there. So let's start there and let's see what anybody else up from heaven's side has to say about topics today, okay?
Okay.
Work for you guys?
Yes.
More to come, more to come. Because people, it has only just begun. It has only just begun. The earth is burning up is right. Because people did not get it right. You didn't get it right. We didn't get it right because we're part of you. We are part of humanity. This is Tobias, and I am a core member of what we call the Circle of Love. But I'm not the only one. And I want to make this perfectly clear to everybody that hears this, that I am talking. Steph is not talking. I am talking through her because she agreed to this a long, long time ago. She agreed to play this part. And she has consistently been a vehicle to talk to heaven, you see, through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. She has played the part of someone who is in various societies called a seer or even a prophet or something of that nature, because she has retained the ability to communicate with heaven, you see. And this has been her trajectory through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And so it's no surprise today that she's here to allow us to have our say. So please do not attribute what we say to Stephanie. It is true that we have our own discussions and we discuss these things between us that are not public videos. It is true that we have a lot to say to each other and we think about things and we talk together and we think a lot alike. And we think a lot alike, you see, because most of us in the circle have been together for a long, long time. Most of us have what you would call an old soul. We've been around the block many times. And so what happens is that those people who are also old souls tend to want to be with each other. They want to be with each other because they're tired of listening to other people who have not been playing the game so long. We'll call it a game because life is a game. It is a game that you will play eternally. So get used to it. Because God energy is the inception of the reality that you know as your earth world. And it has unfurled this way because through the good auspices of the energy that created you, you were given the ability to decide how you were going to play the game. And a lot of people decided that they didn't really care about anybody else. They didn't really care as long as they got what they wanted out of life. They didn't care what happened to anybody else. And so they get back to heaven and God will say, hey, I saw the way you did play the game. Now I'm going to have to help you understand the nature of duality. So I'm going to send you back to earth, honey, and you're going to be on the other side of what you gave to others. If you gave them love, if you gave them consideration, if you gave them the best you have, that's what you'll get. And if you stuck their heads and hung them and crucified them, guess what you're going to get? And if you threw your plastics in the ocean and you did not bother to say, hey, maybe we should raise our own vegetables today, then guess what you're going to get? Guess what you're going to get? If you're one of the ones that's paving over the farm, then you're going to get a paved over farm and it isn't going to feed you very well. So do not blame Steph for what is said here because she has her own personality and her own story. And we have ours. And the fact that she can allow us to talk through her is simply because she doesn't try to control what we say. She does not try to control what we say. She doesn't say, you can't say that, you can't do that, because she trusts us, you see, because we've been friends for a long, long time. And so if you are one of the old souls, you'll feel it deep inside of you. And you'll say, there's something here I need to listen to today. There's something here. If you're not one of the old souls, you may be one of the ones who trust on the old soul, and you have lifetime after lifetime from the beginning of your appearance on earth. And you may say, well, this sounds familiar. I need to listen to this today. However, if you're one of the ones that hated us, that hated the old souls because you blamed us or whatever didn't fit in your agenda or your own selfish motives, then you'll turn away and say, this is baloney. This is baloney. I need to keep throwing my plastic in the ocean. I need to keep driving my fancy cars, keep traveling around the world and throwing my trash on all the beautiful sights that the earth provides. And I don't give a shit about the old souls. I don't give a shit about my neighbors. All I give a shit about is that I get more money, more money, more money, more money. All I give a shit about is that I get more gold, more gold, more gold. And I'll hate all the ones that have more than me. And I'll get on Facebook and I'll condemn them and I'll say, look how rich they are. They are horrible people. Look at these people. These people are horrible people. And when you get to heaven, God will say, what did you give your neighbor? And he will give it back to you. And you will be the horrible people. And you might be rich because that might satisfy your itch to find out what it's like to be rich and miserable. To be so unhappy, you slit your own throat or hang yourself. And no matter how rich you are. Which would you rather have, a happy life or a ton of cold gold? It's up to you. It's up to you. Which would you rather have, a beautiful earth that allows you to go out and play and to say to your children, have fun today in the clear water, in that stream, have fun today in the fields that surround us? Or do you want to be the one that comes back to a barren world where you die young because of the pollution and your children do not even survive to adulthood because you can't provide enough food for them? What do you want? What did you give? That's the question today. So I'm being very, very powerful in what I say, because if we don't turn the ship very shortly, it's going to hit that iceberg, and everything we've worked for thousands and thousands and thousands of years to seek a world where people could come and enjoy the Garden of Eden will be lost, you see. It will all be lost because there's not enough people that could pull together to help change the trajectory of humanity. There's too many people who are still trying to be the golden idol. They're still trying to convince the Anunnaki, who created mankind through the contribution of their DNA, that they need to be taken up to the spaceship in the sky and live forever. And that's their version of heaven today, you see. They think if they just do what the Anunnaki tell them to, and the Anunnaki may not be the word they might use a word like God or the angels or whatever, because they're so confused. They just do what they tell them to do, then they will get a free ticket to heaven, and they can say F you to all the ones who didn't do what they told them to, and those ones they'll condemn to hell, and the ones that do what the false gods tell them to will get a free trip up into that spaceship in the sky, where God will say, the true God will say, sorry, honey, you didn't play the game to win, did you? You played it to lose. And now you're the loser. Because you see, you can't have a winner without a loser. And you tried to win the game at the expense of your neighbor. And you can't do that because you're all in it together. And if you can't figure out that you have to give to your neighbor the happy heart that you would receive, then I guess I'll have to send you back into the swamp and let you retrieve the heart that you left there because you thought you didn't need it. You didn't need to listen to me because your heart, you see, is your connection to God energy. And if you want to throw your heart away because you don't think it's that important, then go ahead. Because the time has come, you see, for the separation of the ones who have played the game so well that they can swell with pride, you see, because the pride is the trust on the group soul. And the group soul was the original soul before it was individuated in order to create humanity. However, when people remember the group soul, they remember that it's all for one and one for all, and they come back together. They don't lose their individuated perspective, you see. They blend it back into the reality of their history on Earth, because every one of you is the recipient of the DNA of the great apes, you see. You think that you are so much better than the animals you go out and kill for sport. You think you're so much better than the world that you pave over because you don't need those trees anymore. Well, you're in for a big surprise, because as much as you benefited from the DNA of the Anunnaki, because they were a very old, seasoned race, you are still the children of the earth. And if you choose not to live as a child of the earth, then you will lose your birth here. And we can spell that B-E-R-T-H or B-I-R-T-H, because it's the same thing, you see. From heaven, it's the same thing. You get a birth on earth where you can unearth the tools you need to climb the ladder of your own trust on a happy heart. Because everybody trusts on being happy, you see. Everybody trusts on being happy. That's the prize you get when you play the game well. You get to be happy. And it doesn't matter what other people say or other people how treat you. You'll still be happy, you see. Jesus was still happy even after they crucified him, because he trusted on reality. And so he was given another chance to go away and travel throughout the known world at that time in order to continue to share his happy heart with his brethren, you see, because humanity was his brethren. And if you can't figure this out, then that's your problem. And your problem is going to be the problem that you're going to face once you leave this particular lifetime and have to be directed through the door that will take you to more shit that you need to clean up because you left it laying on the floor. Now, does that bring up any questions for anyone?
For me, it was very clear speech and so true.
I had a question. So it's come to my attention that most of the governments of the world are the #1 polluters driving climate change. What can the average person listening to us right now do about this, besides lobbying or begging for our rights from a government?
Here's the problem with all of this, because too many people think of the government as something separate from themselves. And it is not true. Even those governments that have dictatorships are not separate from the people, because the people have allowed this to happen, you see, through their failure to trust on God energy. And so let me use Jesus as an example again. If you had a country full of Jesuses, what do you think the government would be like?
A lot better.
It'd probably be pretty kind. And people would not mind if other people, such as men, wore skirts. They wouldn't care if you were black or red or white or yellow polka dotted. They wouldn't care if you dyed your hair red or green. They wouldn't care if you let out a scream when you heard that your life was about to be over, you see, because they would say to you, hey, honey, life is eternal. and you're just going to get a rest, you see, when you go to heaven. And then you'll come back, and if you come back into our society, it will be paradise. So either way you go, you're going to be happy, you see, because once we balance our energy, we can ride the waves of reality. And we don't keep falling off face first into the surf and getting it in our lungs and fall down the rungs of the ladder into hell, you see, because hell is just the failure to trust on God energy. Now, to be more specific about your question, what can the individual do? Well, they can do exactly what we're doing. They can say, hey, it's time, people, to wake up and to pay attention. We're not going to be able to change the minds of the ones who do not understand the nature of God energy. We're just not. They're going to keep doing what they do. And there's going to be the people who will elect the ones who don't give a shit about them, because for only one reason, you see, they're not voting for something, they're voting against something. They're voting against reality, because love is the only reality. And so they choose the ones who will lose when they show up in heaven, because God will say to them, well, you're the loser today because you led your people astray. And so now we're going to have to send you back into a lack of God energy, where you'll be led by the nose into the worst day you ever did see. And that's what's happening to humanity. So the government's just leading them into the worst day they ever did see. So what can you do? Well, here's the information that you need to have, people. Here's the information you have to know. You get to save yourself. You don't have to worry about everybody else. Because if you trust on God energy and you say, God, I trust that this is a problem that has arisen because people have not achieved the balance of energy that would allow them to live in trust on both the spiritual dimension and the physical dimension. I need to balance my energy. And let me explain this to you from here. When I look down at the earth, I look at you three and I say, wow, there's a lot of light there. There's a heck of a lot of light. And so that light is so bright that we can see it from here. And so we see that you have your eyes wide open. And when you look around you, you say, well, the house is burning down. So what are we going to do? We're going to try and get the owners to turn it around when they don't listen to us. When we tell them, hey, the house is burning down, you need to get out of the house, it's burning down, you need to get out here and help us put out the fire. And they say, go away, because that doesn't play well to my audience. So I'm just going to sit here and let the house burn down around me. Thank you. Because I have to do what they tell me to, because you see, I'm the golden idol. And I got this position because everybody voted for me. Or in some cases, I killed everybody else that opposed me. And so I'm the golden idol today because I lied to you and I told you what you wanted to hear, because the only thing that matters to me is that I live in luxury, and then when I die, I'll go poof and I won't exist anymore. So I don't have anything to worry about. I'll just take more than my share. And that is the way most of the governments on earth today are functioning, even in the USA. In fact, the USA has a big problem. But this big problem means only that the ones who are trusting on being the golden idol are going to find out that gold doesn't taste very well. Good. When they have to eat it, you see? And so they'll go down in history as the lost generation. They'll go down in history as the lost generation. For individuals who are understanding what we say today here, they will see that the key is to come together in a new reality where you say, well, that's the old government. We can make our own. We can create our own society. We can create one that would be like a society of a bunch of Jesuses, you see, where we say, I love you. I love the earth. Now we have to help each other to sustain our good energy in a way that will please God, you see, because God is always trying to balance the energy, you see. God is always trying to balance the energy. So when it gets out of whack because too many people are not balancing their own energy, then God will come in and wipe them out eventually. He'll say, well, you haven't balanced your energy, and so you haven't done much about it either. So we'll just smack you down and let the ones that have balanced their energy move on into a new reality. What do I mean by a new reality? I simply mean a new way of seeing your own life. If you see yourself as helpless and you have to do what other people tell you to, then good luck, honey. Good luck. Because you're not listening to God energy. You're not listening to God that says, hey, you got to balance your energy, honey. And so instead of buying an extra car, because you don't really need an extra car, do you? Maybe you should think about hugging your friend and saying, I love you, and your children, and saying, hey, kids, let's take a walk today because I don't think you need to stay in that nursery where they sit you in a row and say, hey, you got to listen to us. Let's go out and play. And I might not make as much money because I'm not attracting as much honey from the ones who would use me to be the golden idol, because that's the way it works, you see. People try to take the energy of others. You just say, I'm going to balance my own energy. I'm going to save my own world. You see? Then you become a light on the earth. And so when you look at it from here, you see a light that bursts into the night. And you say, that person has a lot of light. They've balanced out their energy. And God looks down, you might say, and God says, hey, there's a bunch of people there that are very balanced in their energy. They trust on me. They trust on each other. They're not trying to be the golden idol. They're just trying to live in peace and harmony. And so they've already got their part of the world balanced. So I don't need to worry about them anymore. I'll just have to balance out the other parts where the people are so stupid that they trust on the steeple to guide them. That is to say, where they trust on the false reality. And they've got a lot of lessons to learn. So we'll just allow them to learn their lessons, because eventually they'll come to see that they're not going to escape reality. They're not going to come to heaven and say, oh, thank God I made it. Everybody else went down the hill, but I made it. I got to heaven and I can live here happy forever. And then I tell them the truth. That would be God tells them the truth. And they say, hey, I guess I effed up today because I thought it was all about me. I thought it was all about me. And now I've come to see, God, that you have to balance the energy of the entire universe. You have to balance everything. And if I'm one of the parts that is out of balance, then I'm one of the parts that's going to have to pay the price in a big way. I'm one of the ones that balances my energy, and gathers with those who balance their energy. And we say, what do we want for a government? Maybe we should choose someone who's good at what they do. Maybe if we're going to go to a concert, we want someone who can actually play the piano really well, and not somebody who just wants that gig because they want to be the golden idol. Let's select the people for the jobs that are good at them. And let's not make it about hating our neighbors, you see, because the hatred in the world is so great because everybody's jealous of everybody else that it has created so much imbalance in the way people play that you might say it is an association of egos. And an association of egos is not a good way to play. And if you want to play that way, go ahead, but you will dread the result. Let me tell you, you will dread the presents that you receive because the presents are always your reality. Today is the present. It is the present. And this is your reality. You can't escape it. It's your reality. But what it will be tomorrow, you see, depends upon what you give, because what you give, you will receive. Now, I'm making it pretty simple here, but it can be very difficult for the individual to understand everything that we say today. And they say, oh, we just have to change the way things are going. We have to tell people they can't drive cars. We have to get our government to prohibit this or do that. And that does nothing. That doesn't turn on their light. You see, trying to force others to do what you want them to do only means that they're entitled to force you to do what they want you to. Does this make sense?
It does.
So you might say this is a call out to all the people who trust on reincarnation, who trust on their history as children of the light and children of earth, both, who trust on the cross you see between the spiritual and the physical. That if you can balance your energy, you will find the balance point on that cross, you see, and that will be your portal to reality. You'll have to drop your ego, but I promise you, you won't miss it. It's not so important that you should want to wear it in your hair because it's just a lot of grease up there that greases you so that you can slide down the chute to hell, you see. The hell is full of egos. Now, I'm not saying that there is a hell, as people contend, where you'll go if you don't do what the Anunnaki tell you to. I'm saying the hell that you'll fall into is the one that you tried to give to others, you see. So all of you who are condemning people to hell, have fun, because your turn will come. And so, to all those who would go with us into the new reality, where we will live in peace and harmony, we invite you to share with us your thoughts, your dreams, your hopes. And if you have fears, we ask you that you come and tell us your fears, and we will help you to clear them away. Because whatever fears you have, you see, go into the hopper of your own reality. And if you fear it, you can be assured that it will come to you in order for you to learn that God is kind. God is your own kind because you are a part of God and God is a part of you. And that is the meaning of kind, you see. That all of those who would be like Jesus gathered. They're all of the same kind, you see. It doesn't mean they're identical, far from it. It means that they're the kind that say, hey, it's okay if you want to play a different way. It's okay if you want to wear a dress or have an abortion. I don't care. That's up to you. However, thank you. I'll play my way too. And if I trust that I should wear pants, I'll just wear pants. But I'm not blame you if you wear a dress. You see? Does this make sense to you?
It does.
Makes sense to me.
What other questions might be generated by this?
What can we tell people regarding balancing their energy? How can we make them understand that concept more?
That's an excellent question. Thank you. Steve will take this one because I had a lot of trouble balancing my energy when I was here. But let me tell you that I didn't listen to what people told me about what to do. Just did what I wanted to and said F to you. But I've come to see that I was pretty imbalanced in my own energy. And I had to do a lot of work to get it to balance out. And Steph helped me a lot because she would say, Steve, why do you do it that way? Why do you do it that way? And I would say, I do it this way because that's what I am. I'm this way. And she said, well, when you do it that way, I have to balance your energy because we're the same soul energy, you see? And so if you're going to trust on the Anunnaki, which I don't really, but this is just an example. If you're going to trust on the Anunnaki, that you have to be just like them, you see, then I have to balance your energy in such a way that God will say, hey, you guys can continue to stay together. But if you and I can't balance our energy together, then we can't be together. And so I always have to try to accommodate to you. And I came to see that she had a point to make. Why does she always have to accommodate to me? Why can't I accommodate to her? And so I've begun to back off a bit and say, okay, Steph, do it your way. Because I would always put a lot of pressure on her to do it my way. And she would say, I can't be with you. I can't hang out with you if you cannot let me do what I need to do for my own balance inside myself, you see? And so if you're unbalanced in a relationship, it's very likely that somebody's having to accommodate one way or the other to their own detriment, you see, because they can't balance their own energy. And you're not balanced either. And you can extend this out many times and say a community could be very, very unbalanced because some people are playing one way with such vigor that the other side has to play the other way. And so you could say, if one society becomes very, very draconian in their laws, then the other side has to pay the price. They're not going to solve the problem by draconian laws, criminal laws that penalize people by putting them to death or locking them up for years. It isn't going to change things because you still have to balance the energy. So the more one side goes to the left, the more the other side has to go to the right, you see, in order to balance things. And this goes on in varying degrees of the parts of the universe, you see, because the universe also has to be balanced. Planets have to be balanced. The suns have to be balanced. Everything has to be balanced in the way it will play or there will be an equal and opposite reaction, you see. And so when you learn to balance your own energy, sometimes you have to withdraw from society. Sometimes you have to say, hey, I'm not going to play with you anymore. Because when I play with you, I have to do things I don't want to do. I have to accommodate to you in a way that doesn't allow me to be who I am. And so you may disassociate from your family. You may leave a job. You may even leave a country because you can't be the one who can balance your own energy. So let's talk about the idea of the Mobius strip, which came up in an interview that Steph was listening to. And this guy was talking about it. And the one he was talking to wasn't really clear about what the Mobius strip was or how it worked. But it has two sides. It's a belt with two sides. Think a fan belt. And it has two sides. And so you might say it has a negative side and a positive side. And it runs around two poles, the two polarities, you might say. And you might call one of those poles the negative and one the positive. So as that belt winds around those two poles, you can get a variety of configurations, you see. You could get the negative side of the strip that would touch the negative pole. Or you could get the positive side of the strip that would touch the negative pole. And so you're going to get different combinations of energy. However, when somebody says to you, you got to think positive, you can't think negative, you might say, well, if I think positive, who has to think negative? Because it has to balance, you see? And so it's just another way to be the golden idol to say, well, I have to be positive and think that I'm going to get rich. And somebody has to be poor because you're rich. You see, because poor and rich are another polarity. And the only way to solve this problem, to truly balance your energy, is to say, whatever I give to you is going to come back to me. So if I insist that I have to be thinking positive, then I'm giving you the leftovers, which means you have to think negative. And that means in my next lifetime, I'm going to have to think negative and you can think positive. And this is called the karmic cycle because it goes round and round and round until you say, hey, I don't give a shit whether I think negative or positive. Because you see, it's all the same to me because I know you can't have one without the other. And so I'm just going to trust on love, you see. Now, this is the one saving grace of all of humanity. The one saving grace of all of humanity is that everything begins with love. Love is the energy of God, you see. Love is the basis for all of your reality. And it will appear to you through its polarities. Because although love does not have a polarity on its own, in other words, there is nothing that opposes love, in order to experience love, there has to be two sides of it, you see? And we can talk about that another time, how the polarities arise and how the vibrations, everybody knows the word vibrations, but few people understand what it is. A vibration is the natural tension between polarities. And it can get very, very complicated because you have tons of polarities that are constantly pulling on each other. And so those vibrations can be negative, negative, positive, positive, negative, positive, or positive, negative. And they will affect your reality. And so if you just say to yourself, well, I trust on God today, which is like saying I trust on love today. So I'll just allow God to help me balance my energy. And if things don't go good for me today, I'll say, well, that's what I deserve. That's what I deserve today because I know everything has to balance. And if I claim a positive, then there's going to have to be a negative, and I might as well take the negative so that I don't have to accumulate all that negative energy in the future. I'll just let the belt run around the polarities you see in order to achieve a happy heart, because the waves go up and down, you see. The waves go up and down. If you could only stay on the tip of a wave and bounce from one tip to the next, you wouldn't have much of a ride. This is the nature of reality, that is going to go up and down, right and left, in and out, etc. It's just the way it is. And when you are big enough in your perspective to understand this, and you say, well, if I'm going to slide down that hill, I'm going to have to climb up it again in order to get the thrill of going down it again. So for those people who always insist upon the positive, all they're doing is supporting the idea of victims and victimizers, the idea of the karmic wheel, that if you're positive, who's the negative? And you say to somebody, well, you can't be negative about this. And they say, why not? It's a rough job, but somebody's got to do it. And that's true. Somebody's got to do it. So another way to look at this is that you have to know what your goal is. And the goals that you have are all temporary, except one. There's only one goal that really matters, you see, and that is to have a happy heart. That is to know that you are aligned with love, you see, because when you align with love, that is to say, when you align with God above, then you will have a happy heart. So the easiest way to know if your energy is balanced or not is to know if you're happy. If you wake up in the morning and say, well, my son died a year ago today, I got to be unhappy, then you're not balanced, you see. You're not balanced between the understanding that your son is fine where he is. God has it in control. You are an ego, and you're trusting on the fact that you get to control his reality. And you get to control God's reality. And you get to say, oh, I'm so sad today that my son went away. Poor me, poor me. And your son in heaven says, would you shut up? Because all that does is make me feel guilty that I got away and now I'm happy today. Does this make sense to you?
It does. Yes.
Yes.
Well, we're getting on an hour, so I think we'll quit here quick. So any last thoughts or anything from anybody?
I had a thought. So we've talked about Atlantis and some of what they did with power, potentially nuclear. Can nuclear energy help us get out of some of these issues and potentially restore some balance?
No. No, period. Because there's too much destructive energy. Think of it this way, Vic. The higher you go, the lower you fall. And the problem in Atlantis was that although it provided a lot of benefits to the island, eventually it began to fall into disrepair because there is a natural process of entropy, you could say, that causes things to disintegrate in a way. And so you have to constantly be on top of this. So when you garden, you know that the nutrients in the soil are being depleted and you have to replenish them, you see? And so it takes a little work to do that, but you are trying to achieve balance in the soil. So when you have nuclear power that can provide a lot of energy, that people say, wow, we got it solved today. We got all this heat and light and everything else, and all the gas that we had to use to do this or that is passé, then you're going to be passé because you didn't pay attention to the fact that what goes up must come down. And all that destructive power, which might be constructive power, is going to destroy your community. And as we have said before, this is a big problem, not just for humanity, but for others, you see, because if the planet goes kabooey, which it could if there's enough destructive energy released, then that kabooey would affect the entire universe. You see, it isn't going to stop. You might say the destruction of Atlantis affected the entire world. And some of the effect also went out into space and into the atmosphere. And that was one island, you see. However, the trust on nuclear power is the trust that you're smarter than God, you see? Because God created the atoms and God created you. And God put a lot of power inside of you because every atom inside of you is a powerhouse, you see. And when you come to understand that the power is within you, the power to be proactive and the power to be reactive. So are you a reactor or are you an actor? This is a deep subject because, as you know, everything in the physical reality is an inspiration that tracks the spiritual reality. So these are not just facetious questions. They go deep into the heart of the matter. Because the heart of the matter, you see, is the heart of God energy. I hope this has answered your question adequately for today. We can take up these issues another day because they are very, very profound. However, you must remember that you cannot walk upon the earth without leaving a footprint, you see. Every human being on earth leaves a footprint in their society, one way or another. And that footprint may be deeper for some, sometimes in one life, maybe another, or it may be very shallow in the bigger picture, but it has the same effect over time, you see, because one shallow footprint is going to affect a lot of its own neighborhood, you see. And one neighborhood's going to affect another and another and another. And eventually, that footstep is going to change the entire universe, you see. So keep this in mind as you step on your brother
Mm.
and decide if that's really what you want.
Mm.
Other thoughts or questions before we terminate? Or did I not terminate? Wait, boom. And before the earth terminates, we have lots of questions out there, people. So
Yeah.
before termination day, let's
Mm.
try and change the way we play for those who are ready. For the ones who aren't ready, it's okay. Because you can be assured that God has it in hand and he's not going to drop you through the cracks. He just might stick you in one of them for a while.
Mm.
You always deserve what you get. Just trust on that. And give something different to get something different back. All right. Well, thank you both for being here today. And I want to say thank you to Tobias and Steve for being here today.
Mm.
And hope we
Yeah.
can continue to play in a very real way that will help humanity to turn the ship around.
Mm.
Mhm.
But we need you out there, people. We need you, the ones that hear what we're saying and want to add your light
Mm.
to that area of the world that, it doesn't have to be a physical area, but to that layer of the world energy, so that God can see it and say, well, we got some balance there. It's okay. Okay.
Thank you so much, everybody. Heaven side and earth side, and all of you watching.